Hello, I'm Daniel Hines from SteinerBooks, and I have here with me today author Robyn Brown. We're speaking today with Robyn about her background in education and curative education and how she came upon the material that would later become her book on curative education. So tell me, Robyn, how long have you been teaching and what have you noticed change over time?
I've probably been teaching close to 30 years. I began teaching in Marin, California. I started with a kindergarten, and I took that class on to first grade and completed 8th grade with them. So I had the same group of children for 9 years. And during that time, I watched children go to just about any kind of therapy you can think of. And although I can't say any of it harmed any of the children, I never had the feeling like something really was resolved or something was really completely seen through and the children came out the other way and were done with that difficulty. So when I had my sabbatical, that was my question. What do we do for these children who obviously are needing more than we're able to give them or know what to do for? And I had met a woman named Sunny Baldwin, who used to have a school called Somerset up in Colfax, California. And I called Sunny and asked her if she'd be willing to have me come and work with her. And she was kind enough to let me do that. And I went thinking I was going to spend a year there. And for the first time, I saw children come in one way and leave another way. And really having resolved and healed something. So I got very interested in that work and ended up staying with Sunny 4 years. And it was clear to me that this is what I wanted to do. And Sunny, at that time there was only Somerset doing this work, and I felt like, you know, there's so many children in the world who need this work, and there needs to be more schools like this. So I started what was then called Mulberry Classroom as an attempt to broaden the work.
Okay. So let's dig into this a little bit. It's well known, I suppose, that that children are having an increasing incidence of various forms of learning difficulties. Autism diagnoses are way up. Some people question whether that's just better diagnosis, but it does seem to be a very clear trend, and that's just one of the many. Is this, from your observation, is this just a better case of people paying attention more and diagnosing more effectively, or is this, do you think the actual incidence rate is truly higher, that this is a different cohort of kids these days?
There's two parts to that question.
Okay.
If you read Curative Education, one of the first things that Steiner makes clear is that we really shouldn't diagnose in that way.
Okay.
And that our use of words like autism is really contrary to Steiner's intention in Curative Education. What he's really asking us to do is to understand what's going on with the child. And the background for that understanding has a lot to do with the 12 senses, in particular the 4 lower senses, and understanding the curative polarities, and being able to live into those pictures in a way that can speak to us about what to do for the children. So I don't know that the ability to diagnose has created more situations where there's children like that. I do know that there are more children who are having difficulties, and there's probably a million reasons for that. But in the end, I think all of those reasons aren't so interesting. It's not really interesting how the child got in that condition. What's interesting is how are we going to move forwards and get them out of it. The first sentence in Curative Education, Steiner says it's our job to heal. That we need to be doing what we can to heal these children. Not accommodate them, not put labels on them, not offer them compensations in the classroom, but really trying to work through things with them. And I think that the children who have to do that there's more and more children who are really being called on to, in a sense, go through their own eye of the needle and look at their own difficulties and work on themselves to heal themselves is really a positive thing. I think that it's creating forces for the world that's a very healing force. So I don't spend much time being melancholic about why.
Right,
I'm
right.
much more interested in how do we go forwards and what do we create because of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for people who spend their time navigating the mainstream special education law and so forth, it does seem that there's a increasing list of diagnostic criteria. There's better labels, but then it does likewise seem that there's a shortage of actual therapies. There's a lot of
Right.
labeling and accommodations and, if you will, excusing children from this and that and the other
Right.
thing that's particularly difficult for them. So how does Steiner's model really differ from that?
I think in mainstream that what's really being looked at is the symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
They make a list of criteria, and out of that they decide what's normal or abnormal.
Mm-hmm.
And then they make some kind of a pronouncement or judgment, and Steiner speaks about this in the very, very first chapter of Curative Education.
Mm-hmm.
He says what we really need to do is to learn how to observe, because everything we do to try to meet those symptoms,
Mm-hmm.
in his words, destroys the genius of the child.
Mm.
So instead of looking at the symptoms and putting Band-Aids on the symptoms, which is
Mhm.
what traditionally has been done in mainstream,
Mhm.
we have to learn how to understand the roots of the difficulties.
Mm.
Most of or all of the movement difficulties that I observe in the children have their roots in the first year of life.
Okay.
Somewhere in the first year of life, some stage has not been successfully gone through.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one area we need to address, is really give the children an opportunity to go back to that developmental stage and recapitulate it so they can
Mhm.
come out the other side.
Mm.
And the other piece is really looking, as I said, at the 4 lower senses,
Mm-hmm.
because truthfully, when you begin to address it at that deep of a level,
Mm-hmm.
then all of the answers become apparent, what to
Mm.
do, to really move the child out of that label and through to a different place.
Mm-hmm. So, if I understand correctly, most of your therapies are developed maybe intuitively is a little bit unfair, but by an observation and an understanding and a framework of imbalances in the lower senses. Could you explain a little bit what those, how that manifests and what types of things you would employ as therapies?
Well, first of all, none of the work that I do is my work. I'm
Mhm.
really just trying to follow what Rudolf Steiner talked about in the curative course.
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing really special about me is that I did do my homework.
Right.
Beyond that, I'm just a Waldorf teacher doing my best like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
But as you read the curative course, Steiner talks about the movement work that we should be doing. He talks
Mhm.
about these pictures of the polarities.
Mm.
He implies then the importance of understanding the 12 senses and to really be able to live into those experiences that the children are having. So our work therapeutically with the children is very much like the work of, excuse me, of any Waldorf teacher.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're given a pedagogical background.
Mm-hmm.
We're given certain guidelines as to what's appropriate for each age,
Mhm.
curriculum-wise.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's up to us to penetrate that work to the point that we can begin to act autonomously out of it.
Mm.
And it's the same with curative education.
Mm-hmm.
So we're reading in curative education what Steiner would recommend,
Mhm.
which has to do with how we see the children, the kind of movement work we're doing, allowing them to become responsible for themselves in a new way.
Mhm.
The gift of learning to observe in the right way is that when you truly are observing, you get to see the genius of the child, where the
Mhm.
child is headed.
Mhm.
And I think that that belief in the child is a very healing thing.
Mm.
So just like in any Waldorf school, you can't really quantify
Mhm.
techniques,
Mhm.
but you can definitely look into what is the background that you have to permeate as an educator and begin to try to work independently out of that.
Mm. That sounds very much like Waldorf. We refuse to give you a checklist or
Exactly.
do it just like this and you'll get the
Exactly.
results you expect. It's all thrown back on the create out of your own individual genius and draw the individual genius out of the students that you work with. Well, thank you, Robyn, for speaking with us today.
Thank you.
And for those who are interested, Robyn has a book on curative education available from SteinerBooks. And in that you can find more details about how to develop these capacities that can be so potent in the classroom. Thank you, Robyn.
Thank you.